Good morning, everybody. Tara Bachland here with the Wifey Wake Up podcast. And I'm streaming to also my personal channels on YouTube and elsewhere. This is another topic that I think just goes to overall health and wellness, mental, emotional, particularly for women out there, whether you are a wifey or aiming to be a wifey or not. And so I want to send this out your way as well. This is something that I was so fortunate when I first met my husband, and I met him when I was relatively young. And I was so fortunate that he saw and recognized the innate value in having a woman, a wonderful woman in his life, and that it wasn't about physical or monetary exchange, that it was really about what we could bring to each other's lives. And thankfully, I learned from that as well, coming into his family and really absorbing that in the environment as well. And it's not to say that I think that that was in my family of origin as well, but there was such an emphasis in society about women going into being in the marketplace, being equals with men, that it kind of pushed aside that innate sense of just being value in what you can bring intrinsically because you are a woman. So today's topic is women. What is your value? And please like, comment. I'd love to hear your comments. Share. If someone come to mind, share this with them. And of course, subscribe. And men, if this is something that you wish more women knew, please subscribe and share as well. I appreciate it. And I love hearing from you as well. It's helpful to hear from the men's point of view as well. So, like I said, I was really fortunate that I came into a family that my husband was raised in a way to really appreciate just innately what a woman brings to the relationship. And it wasn't about what I could bring financially, what I could bring physically, perform, do. You know, of course, all those play a role, but what I'm getting at is it wasn't market based. So much of our emphasis, particularly for women, I'd say since a bit before my generation and beyond. So my generation, I've heard is called the Zennials. I can relate to the Gen Z and the Millennials, and I'd say this probably began more even in the Gen Z era as well. Yes, Gen Z, Gen X. Sorry, Gen X. Z. I would say Z because Zennials, but it's with an X. That's why it sounds like Z. So I can relate to the Gen X and the Millennials. And there's much more, I think, deliberately or not, an emphasis put on the market value that women can bring to society in a way by them becoming more equals with men. Now, I'm going to be careful here because I want to stay on topic. This is very specific. So what I'd like to point out is what makes someone more valuable. Okay, if we are talking about the market sense, just to draw a correlative, is not that they can do what everybody else can do. So like if you're selling a company and you're the owner of the company and someone is looking at purchasing your company or purchasing a portion of their company, if the company represents you or you represent the company, yes, there's a value in you being able to do sell widgets that someone else can do, but the real value is when you can do something unique. You have a unique widget, a unique piece of software. You have a sales system that just works tremendously. There's something about you or that you figured out that makes your business, in this sense, drawing a correlation here, unique and different. If it's just like anyone else, then you don't have a cutting edge. You if you can sell, you're not going to be selling for the higher the higher multiples. And similarly, if we were to draw a correlation between monetary market value and a person's innate value, it is what you bring to the table that is unique, that makes you more valuable. Okay. Again, the focus of this is not market value. I'm just drawing that correlation that our society, I think, promotes so much in how we as women need to be just like others, like the men, be able to do or this or that. But to really have innate intrinsic value is about what you do differently, what you do uniquely that makes you more valuable. And again, I'm moving away from market value. Okay. I want to get us away from thinking about our market value of selves. So think if you have something like a quilt or a piece of jewelry, maybe a handwritten note from someone, whether you knew them or it was maybe a great grandparent, and you have like a love letter or something that they wrote to their loved one, something that you value, but very few or no one would really understand that unquantifiable value, right? You couldn't even go maybe even to an antique store and sell it because it's so common among the other antiques there, but it's special to you. That's the kind of value I'm talking about. You can't place a value on it because there's that sentimental value in that case, right? I'm going to share a few examples from my life. So I have a very plain but beautiful, I guess it's a milk pitcher. It's bigger, so I think maybe it's a water pitcher. And it's from the old family farmstead. And it's unique and special to me. If you went to an antique store, you could probably find, half a dozen like them, depending on the antique store. But it's special to me because I know where it comes from, and some of the ancestors that may have been pouring from it at the dinner table. I've found out in the hard way, it doesn't even hold water. It will leak very quickly, anything that you put into it. So it doesn't serve a purpose anymore other than I have it up on a cabinet and it looks really neat. And when I see it, I know the value of it. Another example that is that's very sentimental to me is I have a beach towel that I got when I was probably about 8 years old. My grandma and grandpa took me and my cousin, who was my best friend at the time, to Florida. It was our first time in Florida. It was the first time going to the ocean. And it's a silly beach towel. And it's so thin these days. I mean, it would still soak up water. It's still purposeful, useful in that way. But it has more value to me. I mean, you could just give it away. You couldn't even really sell it these days, the condition that it's in. And it has a really silly saying on it. I won't even illustrate it. It's more funny between me and my grandma, I think, who fortunately is still alive, and we can share in those memories still. But it has value to me. I have it kept away in a plastic box where it hopefully can't degrade much more. And when I do see it, if I do pull it out, it helps to refresh those memories even more than if it was just left to my memory. So that has more value than what you could only give it away these days, I'm sure. But it has a lot more value to me. And so I want to correlate this to your value as a woman. And your value as an individual is not related to what you can bring to commerce. There's been so much focus put on that. I just want to help separate those concepts in your mind, because this is something that was really helpful and valuable to me. I still work at it these days. It's so ingrained in our culture, our society, how so many of us were brought up. And I think this is why we've lost touch with, we've turned into women who, because I think the value has been placed on the monetary sense, the intrinsic, the innate, the value that you cannot put a price tag on, that you can't even quantify, has been pushed aside. And so it is about exchange, right? It's just this for that. And I think that, and in my experience, in my observation, that women actually value themselves so much less, much less, because the focus is on monetary and market value, and especially in their bodies. So, women have been involved in commerce really since the beginning of time. They've been working from home on the farmstead, maybe taking things to market, and but primarily doing things within their community. And so many things, even 100, 200 years ago, over this period of time, have been moved into the commercial marketplace, the Industrial Revolution, right? And during that time, the work that the women used to do moved into the factories, and therefore women, if they could not make an income otherwise at home, also moved into the factories. And what was very challenging is, of course, it's very difficult to raise kids when one or both parents are occupied and away from the home. Okay, being careful not to go too off on too many tangents here. That's a topic for another day, but that's just a matter of fact, right? And any woman who works outside of the home, or even inside of the home, but anyone who works specifically outside of the home, any woman, knows that you essentially have two jobs, right? If you're not really equally sharing in all the duties, and especially if you're single mom, that is going to fall on you. But basically what I'm saying there is the home duties are another job. And again, that's a topic for another day. But I think what we've lost in the last, let's say, 150 years is particularly in more recent history, is the appreciation for what goes into making a home and what a woman can intrinsically provide by her natural innate way of being. Hear me out here. So these are things that they're so valuable that you can't put a price on it. And I'm just going to add one to the list that I just came up with. So these are things that you can't really put a price on. I mean, yes, you can hire people to be caregivers, nurses and so forth, but it's not the same as having that person who loves you doing these things, being there for you. So I want to emphasize, even though a number of these things are going to be things that you do, it's more than what you do. It's what's involved. It is the love that is put into the cake, not just the cake, right? You can pick up a cake at the grocery store, but it's the cake that is made with a lot love, thought, and intention. It has a special change to the ingredients just for you. Maybe it's your ability to foster interactions that are so heartwarming that the love radiates out even further. I know a woman like this, where you have an encounter with her, you might not have seen her for a year, but you feel so much genuine love and appreciation that you can feel like you're sparkling with that, and then that's just spreading onto others because you've had this wonderful encounter. Maybe it's your ability to listen in a way that people feel truly heard, and they won't open up to anyone else like that. That is a extremely valuable innate quality. And I'll recognize these are qualities that men can have as well, but they're innately feminine. And that's what I'm focusing on. I'm not focusing on trying to make everything equal and balanced. Believe me, it's a part of my nature to do that. That's why it's been so hard for me to focus in on and appreciate these innate qualities in me as well. And I think we've lost this in our culture, and we've lost so much as a result. Also, maybe it's your ability to pick a gift that is so particular to that person that it amazes them. They're almost like, how did you know this? But because you slow down, pay attention, and really get to know a person and care, that, it's very, very particular and very special. Maybe you can spot something unique and beautiful in another person, especially a woman, and compliment her on that. And maybe you can see what others don't see. Again, it's a tuning in, it's a slowing down, it is a caring that I think we need to slow down a little bit more again in our society to tune into again. Maybe you know just what to say to comfort someone at their most challenging times. That can be really challenging, right? I mean, maybe you're at a funeral and of course someone just lost someone, right? And saying the right thing it can be the difference of one word or the tone of voice. But maybe you have an innate ability to tune in, to be present in the moment and tune into that person and be able to sense what is the right thing to say or not say as well. And maybe or you are someone who is able to verbally or physically touch, I think of a massage therapist in this sense, someone who is notoriously untouchable. And I mean untouchable maybe in the emotional sense, and touching them with your words, your presence, and maybe even physical. Maybe you are a massage therapist or someone who works in that realm, and you just have an ability, again, to tune in, who cares enough to take that time and just has that natural ability. And finally, I think throughout all those, I inferred there's a woman's intuition, right? And that comes up often. And there's so much value to this. Thank you. Here's my morning
also
coffee.
A man's intuition.
Yeah, well, there are some men who have especially amazing intuition. Look at that beautiful cafezinho. Isn't that cute? Butter coffee, by the way. And so a woman's intuition. Again, I will say this is not to exclude men, but to help women to focus on, again, come back to your natural innate abilities and what is unique about you so that you can break outside of just the monetary market value and placing that value on you. I'm going to come up with a better way to explain this, but the difference that it made for me is making for me, it's still something that is settling in and I'm working on, is that it helps me to settle into being myself and to not just be performing in life. It is, I'm okay with who I am, and I'm okay slowing down a little bit. It's okay. I joke with myself that, in my company, I tend to be a mom boss, and I don't like being bossy, but things still need to get done. I say please and thank you with about everything because I want to have, I think that's how people ought to be treated. And we take time, how are things going in your family? Now there's a part of me, I'm very down to business. It's a natural part of my personality too, that sometimes I have to also be able to accept that. But it's also acknowledging that there's nothing wrong with that, and that also you can be a business person and be a woman and bring out those womanly characteristics and be a woman at home. There's so much I want to say, and I'm already past 15 minutes, which I try to limit myself to 15 minutes so I can focus on a topic. But I really want to emphasize the difference that this can make when you are a woman in particular, that deep down inside, you really feel and that you're womanly, but it feels like you need to perform like a man. And especially if you have any significant level of accountability and productivity in your personality, that can easily overcome. It's okay to, take a rest for 20, 30 minutes and not have to be performing all the time. And that your value is not just based on your hourly rate, what you can put out into the marketplace, but it is those intangible things. It is that quality. I mean, you know the difference, right? When maybe you've been sick, like very sick at the hospital, or someone you know has been, or maybe they're in a nursing home, and you can tell the difference in the person who's just doing their job and the person who is really giving. They're really going above and beyond because they care. And it might not be more physically than another person, but there's just that extra that you cannot even quantify, right? It makes you want to give a service person, for example, a bigger tip, because you can tell that there is just more. But when it comes down to it, there's no way of quantifying it. You can't actually put a value on it. And especially when that person, let's say the great example is if you're ill, if you're not feeling well, and you need someone to take care of you. And typically that's going to be, if you're not in the hospital, that's going to be someone who loves you, who's closest to you. And it's not just the care that they get. It's not just bringing soup, bringing water, a cool cloth. It is the extra time. It's waking up and realizing that they were there and you didn't know how long they were there. But there's something about their presence that can bring healing. That's the unquantifiable value that I wish that more women could settle in. I think we know this, but it's the very quality that I want us to settle into again, and that's the quality of settling in. I've needed this so much in my own life and I see so much hurrying and so much separation from being and doing. Okay, I hope that emphasized the point a bit more. This is not what I planned on that sense, but I really want to emphasize the difference between the being and the doing. Now, what you may hear is that so many of these things are things that you are doing. Ironically, this is what makes it so challenging to explain. And I'm not talking about entitlement here, like because I do or am all these things, then I should get this or I should be this. If you notice that everything I mentioned was something that you can give or be to someone else. And think for a moment how good it feels when you are giving maybe one of those examples. Maybe you are lending an ear to a friend, maybe even a stranger that you can tell just needed to kind of get something off their chest, but you were there for them, and how good it felt after that in giving you actually received. And so it's the opposite of entitlement. It is so absolutely amazing that by giving something that is very innate and natural to you, and I'm encouraging you to find what that is. Comment, please, share what is innate and natural to you, how much that fills you. I'll give another example, because I think we end up focusing so much on our monetary marketing value that it's easy to lose touch with what these things are. So one of the examples I brought is one of the talents, traits that I've had since I was very young. So even as a kid, I was the one who even other kids would tell tough things to, and it would feel good. As a kid, you don't have much to say, but even just being there for someone. Another thing that I like to do that is kind of one of these innate values that is not commercially traded is when just recently we were at a restaurant, and when there's someone who appears to be from Central or South America, usually they're bringing the water or doing something like that, I'll strike up a conversation. And it happens usually pretty easily because, I might mistake them for the waiter. And like recently she's like, no English. And I started talking with her, and I found out that she has been here in Minnesota for a year, but barely speaks like no English. And so she came to the table a couple times to exchange a few words. But then before we left, I took a few minutes with her and gave her some tips on how to learn English. I've worked with a number of foreigners and teaching English and just skills and living here in the US. And so just gave her some tips on how to learn English when you're always around Spanish speakers. And it's something that, took 5 minutes from my day, and it felt so good. It wasn't like work to me. You have something like that too. You have something that you are just tuned into, right? You see someone in need and you can't help but share it. It's not work. You don't feel like someone owes me after that. And I want to emphasize that too, because there's a lot of emphasis, and sometimes rightly so, that as women, we can't be all about giving. We have to fill our tank sometimes too. That is another talk. But recognize what are the things that you have natural talents for, natural abilities for, that you can innately give to someone that fulfills you as well. So I hope above all, you can see that the examples that I brought up are innately feminine qualities. These so often get pushed aside, for in exchange for the value that we think that we deliver by exchanging our hours for dollars. But really, it's these intangible things. It's these little moments, and maybe, it is a whole day or a whole week caring for someone who is ill, but you can't put a price tag on it. And I can almost not emphasize this enough, and I'm going way over time here, because this leads to other things in life and how we value ourselves. It leads to, if we know our innate value and can consciously separate out the market value and our intrinsic innate value as a person and what we can bring to the table as a woman because of our innate abilities, then we will also treat ourselves and other women differently. Instead of treating them like a commercial item, treating our own body like a commercial item, we will see the deeper, more innate, intrinsic value. And my husband came in to distract me at the perfect time. This is the perfect time to end. I'm going to cut it off here. This is why I need to do this at 6 a.m., not at 8 a.m. But anyways, I really hope that hit home with you all. Would love to hear your comments. We'll expand on this in many directions. There's so much more to say about this. But I really hope that by spending almost twice as much amount of time that I wanted to, that the point came across. So thank you for being here. Make sure to love to hear your comments, subscribe, share with a friend that you think would benefit from this or find it interesting, and have a wonderful day, everybody. Take care.